We are here with Daniel Cluff, who's the president of Bactelife. How are you, Daniel?
I'm doing great, Garrett. Thanks for having me on the show today.
One of my favorite things we get to discuss today is a little bit of ag tech farm talk.
It's where we love to be. It's great.
And it is fun because we all need food, last I checked.
You know, we were talking to an Israeli group, and what I really like about the Israelis, they've got thousands of years old knowledge and understanding. And one guy told it to me this way. He says, look, a man who is full has 1,000 problems, but a man who is hungry has one.
Yeah.
So I think our goal in life is to give people 1,000 problems at the end of the day.
Yeah. And save water and improve yields and everything along the line there.
You know, agriculture is looking into managing its inputs and its outputs more efficiently. And not a lot that we're replacing, but we're making it function better.
Yeah. Yeah, you know when you're talking to a farmer, if they say inputs are this and outputs are that.
You know, if you haven't worked with a farmer, you're missing out on the best professionals we have in Utah. I think they're the last of the purebred pioneers that we have. I've never seen more innovation. And even if there's not like, you know, robotic milking cow things or whatever, even your most humble, simple farmer, he may have a limited vocabulary, but he professionally understands environmental and economic balance. They're great.
A little duct tape and baling wire.
Tell you what, that's where all innovation's born.
All right. Tell us a little bit about Bactelife. You know, where did the idea come from? Where did the founding team come from? And ultimately, how have you guys gotten your start?
Yeah, great. I mean, the big thing that we're looking for back to life is a play on the mixture of bacteria and life. And we're more than that. But we really believe in a concept of reducing water, improving soil, and partnering with nature. And we've all been playing with microbes in different areas of the industry, various areas. And agriculture has a lot of openings to really make a big difference that's good for all of us. So our emerging group, we started off just trialing this concept on lawns, believe it or not. We 4 years ago thought, man, lawns is where we're supposed to be. And we did 120 lawns, and we were so proud that we were able to use that to conserve about 1.8 million gallons of water with some participating homeowners, and their lawns look better. I mean, in a lawn, you're not looking at yield. You just want this to be as good feel and doing good things. And we did a little bit of alfalfa, and it looked like we were having some value. And we had a valuation, and we won some competitions. And the guy who challenged us, he says, you know, as good as this is for lawns, you could have like a $50 million company, which amazing. We'd be incredible with that. But they said, look, if you can make this transition to ag, you can make a difference. And you'd probably be between $500 million and $2 billion.
Yeah.
So the last 3 years has been that question. What can one do to make a company of that magnitude? Our last greatest, you know, proof of concept, we did 12,500 acres with the state of Utah in a water optimization grant. The funding was used to provide product to the farmers and support and get a lot of technical review, testing done at Utah State University, see what we could find out. And in 12,500 acres, we were able to conserve just over 4.5 billion gallons of water. And that's just our farmers saving 30% with just 12 farmers.
Yeah.
And we were really excited about that. And so as our founding team has been moving into this, we have a lot of groups that are working with the international market. We have some people working here in the state of Utah. And our whole goal is to truly bring forth a technology that allows farmers to recover from the economic perils that they've been facing in the last 4 years, but meeting the intentions of regulations happening upon them faster than they can meet them. I mean, everyone's watched Brussels, people are watching Idaho, and we're having resource management issues like, man, we don't have enough water. Or what if our fertilizer supplier becomes a war zone? I mean, these are big issues.
Yeah.
And so our team has been focused on food security in a level that gives more flexibility to the farmer. And if they have no issue with their inputs, they have plenty of water, they have plenty of resources, well, we can channel more growth. But if they do run into a lean time, we add just more flexibility to their economic and environmental sustainability.
Yeah. And it really moves the needle. And you are moving that needle not just by, hey, you should use this because I say it's good, right? You guys went through a lot of data collection.
You know, it's tough because it's almost like you have to meet multiple people's demands based on the other person being happy. So if you're going after like some government grants or support, they're asking, well, have you gone to the universities? Have you gone to farmers? So we go to the university and they say, well, have you gone to the government? Have you gone to the farm? Well, you go to the farmer. It just feels like everyone's playing hot potato. So launching an agricultural product, the difficulty is knowing that you have to meet multiple perspectives of third-party validation. Yeah. So our numbers going to Utah State University, we were very excited to work with them. They're an amazing institution. They're our greatest land-based university here in Utah. And we would pitch this idea of how we want to be tested. We come back and they would push it even further than we anticipated. Like in one of our testing sites up in Wellington area with Utah State University, normally our farmers use about 3.5 acre feet to 4 acre feet of water per acre. And so if you just want to translate that, imagine 3.5 feet of water on top of dirt. That's 3.5 acre feet. And so we were looking at 42 inches of water to compete with what farmers were doing. And we thought, well, we can reduce water by 30%. We're talking like people are growing crops with 3 feet of water, 2.5 feet of water. And our first results back, we were tested between 3 inches of water and 6 inches of water, and still meeting the demands of crops production in that area and increasing their nutritional content and the highest market values of that crop at the same time. Yeah. And so that was huge for us. I mean, if we apply that in Utah, we're talking about hundreds of billions of gallons of water that we could potentially save without impeding the farmer's ability to produce the crops and outputs that they need.
Yeah. All the numbers are checking out. Right?
Yeah. It's that early adoption though, because we've had a lot of emerging companies study these in vitro. They go in and they say, okay, we found this crop, Magicalis, Bacillus, whatever, right? It's going to put it in there and then you're going to be able to reduce your water by 50%. But the problem is once you take that from a lab with only one variable and you put it on a farm that has 10,000 variables, they don't always translate. And so farmers have been burned by big promises and low delivery. It just doesn't transition. They're not seeing that value. And so we went to the whole drawing board of saying, why do these microbes that work in a lab not work in a field? And we found one of the key components is a lot of technologies don't focus on how you can prime and truly create this catalyst effect, making things work by taking care of the microbes first, giving them a unique consortium of minerals that are normally gone in the soil after 3 or 4 harvests, and put that at a plant's doorstep. A plant determines if a microbe is going to form a relationship with it or not the other way around. And so if you don't give a microbe something in the beginning, it's like putting a beggar on the corner with a bunch of wealthy people driving by. You have to create something of value for this relationship to happen.
Yeah. So the plant decides this is good.
Yep. The plant decides it. So, I mean, if you look at a root hair, take about something about the length of your pinky, about 2.5 inches, give or take. For every inch of root hair, if we make this established right, we can create 8 miles of network. And in that 8 miles of network, what's so powerful is that we can channel nutrients into the plant and expand that network from plant to plant. What fertilizer and water delivery don't do right now is allow plants to cooperate. It's a very competitive environment. Things are stretching for resources. There's light and there's lots of limitations. But if you can establish this network of fungi and bacteria, you can make it to where plants go from competing to cooperating with each other. It's like the beehive concept. Mm-hmm. Instead of a fly or a hornet, you got a super organism. And this level of science is so powerful because we can take plants and allow them to cooperate, and they can fill out the needs of the plants around them. And that's really kind of the emerging factor where people say, why are you so powerful? Well, we're taking those microbes that people know about it, and we're using nanotechnology, which is basically changing the size. We don't put robots or anything like that in there. If you change the size, you decrease the energy necessary for an organism to get something of value to a plant. And now you can just speed up that reaction time. So most of our farmers can see a physical financial value within 6 weeks. Yeah. Sometimes it's within 2 weeks, but it depends on the conditions of the crop. They're so different.
Yeah. It all sounds amazing. And you mentioned like farmers being burnt with like snake oil in the past, right? Right. But you know, when they're driving around their various fields, they're looking, and you know, when they're done with the harvest and BSing at the coffee house, it's what did you do?
Right. You know, everybody is looking for the advantage. What's the next thing? And if you open any farm tech magazine today.
Yeah.
You open it up and it's not like, look at the new combination of fertilizer. It's like, wow, look at these new microbes. I mean, biofertilizers, biostimulants, bioinoculants, this new bio whatever is the new rise of efficiency in plants and crop production. So for example, if you take a plant, you got to step back and realize that a plant's not much different than a human being. If you shake your own hand, realize that 45% by mass of your body is a cell you didn't create. That's by mass. By number, 1 out of 5 cells is not yours on your body. And we're just barely exploring this relationship that the body is an interaction of systems. It's rarely a creature experiencing its own thing. How I eat, how I feel, my emotions, all of that are really tied to my diet and how it's broken down in my digestive tract. Plants aren't much different. And we're just trying to figure out how that transfers in the soil, though, between things. And so the biggest, monumental shifts that we think we're adding to farmers where they go, okay, that sounds hogwash to like really real, is where they're realizing that any living system is benefited by good bacteria and fungi. And you're either managing having too many resources that make you sick or not enough resources and you make you sick. And bacteria help you buffer those issues that you face.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is you're going to decrease like your carbon footprint.
Oh, yeah.
Increase your oxygen
and your yields.
And your yields. And theoretically, you won't have to spend as much energy costs on fuel.
Yep.
Unless you're getting like a 4th or 5th cut, theoretically. But
yeah, I mean, farming is kind of like, it struggles to make everybody happy. The main thing that they're saying, you take the greenest occupation in the world, heavens, you're growing plants. Okay. This isn't like you're out dumping chemicals and killing baby wells and stuff. This is something that's very good for the world, but we're trying to manage its impact at an industrial level. So people say, well, carbon, if you put fertilizer into something, you grow something, you pull it out and turn it into something else, you still have about the same amount of carbon. And if you kind of take this, there's different organizations that estimate this, but giving you the range, every pound of fertilizer has a carbon footprint between its content, its creation, and its output of about 6 pounds. So every time I can take away 1 pound of fertilizer from a field, I can decrease carbon technically by 6 pounds. So we're not waiting for a down the road, how much is in the soil, how do they capture it, how do they measure it? Because it feels like a moving target in measuring carbon capture. The standards change, the companies shift, and how you buy these carbon credits is kind of difficult. So the biggest value we offer to the farmer is the efficiency of managing their nutrients that they're putting in, synthetic fertilizers. So for example, the USDA estimates that for every 100 pounds of fertilizer you use, between 40 pounds and 80 pounds of that is lost to the environment. And the first loss to that is economic. To be very honest, if you didn't need that much in the first place, well, why use that much? And we're flooding the environment because it's not very efficient. It's like trying to fill up a gas tank with a fire hose. You can do it. But if you change the way in which that stuff channels into there, you can completely manage how much is being put up front and getting better transfer. So the first thing is, let's make this more efficient. Now, microbes, what's so powerful about them is if you can get these things established, they can put out this huge network that acts like a net that channels everything back into the plant. So I told you that 8 miles per 1 inch. Some people have estimated by putting this into the soil, you can increase the absorption surface area by more than 700 times. And now you're creating something powerful. You're just channeling things that are normally lost into the environment into your crop. And in doing that, there's just a win all the way across the board. You have less nutrient pollution, you have more production, and your crops are healthier and functioning better. So there is no loss. And as the soil functions, the crops have better outputs and less impediments to, the values you're trying to create.
Yeah. And if you were going to buy farmland, I don't want to be a gentleman farmer, in, let's say it's Nebraska, and there's irrigated and there's non-irrigated, right?
Correct.
So the non-irrigated, you're just hoping and praying that it rains and all that good stuff. Irrigated, you got some control.
Yeah, you do. And you're just dealing with what nature throws at you. And people are worried about the climate. And this is non-politically oriented. There are changes that we're trying to understand, whether natural or human caused. It's really indifferent. The fact is we're trying to make crops adapt to changes and make them function better. And so that's the focus of where we're at. So if you are, for example, using our technology and it was a non-irrigated area, we would be applying this in the springtime and working within the soil moisture. And when it works and is in place, it can capture water from precipitation and the environment a lot easier and still channel it. And people wonder, well, how fragile is your product? Well, when a leaf wilts, our microbes are still functioning. So we've had tests on accident. This is almost like discovering penicillin, developing a product. We had farmers that in Idaho, they're different than Utah. They use pivots, and in the corners, they use hand lines. And so if you lose, for example, all of your employees to an unforeseen thing and you can't physically move your hand lines, you just have to turn those off. So we had a farmer that applied our product in the spring, got it everywhere, had some employment issues, and could only pay and function the pivots, the main function of the crop. And when he was pulling off his hand lines, he thought, well, I've probably got about 10 days before this starts to wilt bad. It's July. It should die. I'm thinking, end of July. His crop never died and stopped producing even until about November of that year.
Oh, wow.
And what we found is that the water was still able to channel into those further reaches of the pivot without any water. Technically, there was no direct water on top of it, but the crop was able to get something from a neighboring plant and make that work.
Like a camel or cactus, right? Like
it's one of those things that like you can make things go longer in the environment when it's there. Yeah. And it just gives you an efficiency that, as amazing as people are, I mean, we've got great inventions. We can't beat nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mother Nature will always win.
Right.
But, get back to this made up example. If this farmer got as big a yield on non-irrigated using Bactelife and didn't use it on the irrigated, that would be a light bulb moment. And
Yeah, we one of my favorite farms last year, and real examples, Scipio, central Utah, ran out of water about June. And so they had their first cutting and second cutting. And for those learning alfalfa language today, there's different levels of crops over the season. And depending on your altitude and temperature, you'll get different numbers of cuttings over the year. So in our area, there were 3 for a whole season. And farmer ran out of water in June. And the market value of alfalfa plummeted last year from $360 a ton to, 180 was like the average on some. It dropped a lot. Our farmer grew his final cutting without using any form of irrigation. He had less than 1/10 of an inch of rain. And instead of getting just over $200 a ton for alfalfa, the quality of his alfalfa and the production matched from previous years, where he was getting almost $293 a ton. So the economic output, we've had some farmers have a return on investment at the high end of about 20 to 1. So, and on the lower end is usually about a 3 to 4 to 1 return on investment. What's so hard that we agree with the farmers is we are not the only thing that's put on a farm. And so we kind of have to agree that we're observing the efficiencies. Are we seeing an improvement in yield, and are we seeing a direct correlation, or is it could be, it couldn't be. There's some things we don't have to claim everything, but if the finances rise, the outcomes rise, the product is better, farmers start putting those good practices into play as an assurance, worst case scenario.
Yeah. And a lot of what we're talking about is obviously applicable to farms, big, small, medium. Mm-hmm. I would love to try it on my little farm in my house. But it benefits everyone else too, right?
Yeah.
The water conservation, the carbon, even if all you see is, when you're flying to Chicago or these pivots and all of that, you're like, oh, good for them.
Right.
But it's benefiting everyone that doesn't care about what we're talking about.
Whether it doesn't care or doesn't have the ability to make an impact at their scale. I mean, people are always wondering to do something, right? And where I get excited about, okay, what are we really trying to do? I mean, our ancestors started picking up plants and putting them together, and we formed crops. And they started to get animals and put them together and formed herds. We're pushing that dynamic of what can you do when you herd microbes? What does that do? What can it do? And when we work with the standard homeowner, grass is so much easier to manage because I'm not baling it. I'm not selling it. I'm not worried about the quality when it's done cut. But what does it look like now? In some of our Utah State University testing, what we did was find out how little water you can put on your lawn. So think about your lawn from July to August.
Yeah.
And if you're that water-minded person in Utah, you're like, I'm going to try to water 3 times a week. And you're that crazy person because almost everyone else is like, I'm going to water it till it almost floats, you know? And in this study, Utah State University took a camera, high resolution camera, and they measured green versus brown. And so their goal was they put the product down, got it in motion, and then did a water stress test. Let's give it the least amount of water possible. And so they would use this camera to measure until it dropped below 50%. When it dropped below 50%, they would add a half inch of water. And so if you're looking from like July 12th to August 20th, you're looking, if you're a conservative person trying to make a difference, watering 3 times a week, you're going to water like 45 times. We watered between 0 and 2 times.
Yeah.
So you're talking about reductions in water in the 90 percentiles, like reducing it. And we used half the amount of fertilizer at the same time.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at that context into the human environment, people are kind of you're trying to find a bad guy. And so when there's no water, people immediately go, well, 66% of our water is outdoor use. Lawns are the devil. Man, if you try to build a city without lawns, do you realize the chemical pollution and sound pollution and heat pollution and everything that happens if you're not putting some sort of vegetation into that? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they're one of our greatest buffers and benefactors to the human experience. When we start to concentrate people, you don't say, hey, son, go out and play on the gravel.
Yeah.
Right? It's out on the lawn. You don't put your dog out in the sand patch if you can. It's one of those comforts that has an environmental value.
Yeah.
So if we can go to the average homeowner and say, look, keep your lawn, but let's reduce that water by 60, 70, 80%, and reduce the runoff pollution and reduce the chemicals and reduce the bad things. Now we're talking about a different level of value that integrating, lawns back into society really have a value, and we can protect that and make that more efficient.
Yeah. It all sounds amazing. There's no drawback. I'm still interested in the testing, right? Because if you go out and say, I've got a pill that'll cure baldness and make you look like Bo Jackson.
Sign me up.
Then I don't think you can sell that, right? You got to go through a lot of loops there. But with you guys, is it like the USDA is the final stamp of approval? Who is it?
The reality is everything hinges on the farmer and their decision making. We have gone through university testing. We've ensured that we have no genetically modified organisms. We want a good environmental impact. We don't want to create unknowns. Naturally occurring organisms, organic quality and standards. But as we're going into these next levels of who certifies it, it's really not hard to go from state to state. The challenge really is early adopting farmers and the security of their investments. And so here's the biggest barrier. You have 2020, we're rocked by a pandemic. We crawl out of that hole 2021, 2022. And at the same time, we start this big, huge war. This war happens. And if you're not one of 5 countries, 80% of your fertilizer is imported. And so you have all these huge supply chain disruptions and all these problems. Your average farmer hits a debt ratio of about $1.5 million in Utah. And then you ask them to try a new innovation. Mm-hmm. It's like the old Heinz 57. I'm so glad they started a barbecue sauce during the Civil War. Don't get me wrong, but you're helping farmers meet needs, but now you have lower margins. They don't have the ability to try these innovations. Yeah. And then your market collapses with trade issues and wars with, China. So we're struggling mostly because Utah wants to have food security, food sovereignty. Yeah. But we're consuming less than 1% of the food that we grow. And then it's not really for people. It's a pass-through product. It goes and it does reach us through our cheeses and our meats and everything else. We need it. But then it's like, how do we merge our food security with a global opportunity? I don't see people growing banana trees, but there's bananas at the supermarket. There's kiwis, and we're trying to find that new balance of how can we add, security to these countries and to communities, but still be a player in the world market. And people are really reinvesting within their borders more and more to adopt to those changes.
Yeah. This is big stuff, right? Like it has socio-political impacts. If your food safe, you don't need to invade any other countries.
It kind of helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're squared away. All of this takes a little bit of time, energy, and a lot of science, but it also takes a bit of money. What are you guys doing as far as fundraising and growing the business?
When we started back in 2021, 2020 area, we were the purebred bootstrappers. We thought, we need to raise less than $1 million and make more than $1 million for our seeding round. And we met that goal. We brought in $700,000. We turned a revenue in 2 years of just over $1.5 million. And we took that next step of looking at ourselves of, should we continue to grow this a little bit slower, manage our risk, keep our equity? What do we need to do? And then we started to get the word out of our opportunities. And literally right now, our main clients that we're talking to are countries. We start from presidents and departments of ag down. And we recognize we've got to raise some more. So we are still very low. We were trading 20% of our company for $3.5 million. And we purposely went that low because, number one, you can never lie about where you are. You may have the potential to lay golden eggs and everything else, but you can only go off the valuation of your company. And so we were cracking $16, $17 million in our valuation with everything we're bringing in. And we were looking for very strategic investors at that point. We'd taken in some good private money, no strings, good value back. And we were trying to figure out, should we go with a VC or an angel network or what group or who brings the value? Money is one facet of business, but to transition from a startup to a Series A, if you're hunting for money, you're going to die. It's all about the connections and what people bring to the table. So we're trying to close that investment right now. We have one large investor and there's a little bit of money on the side that if someone was interested, like, hey, I'd love to jump in and make a difference with this. We do verified SEC regulations. We don't want to be breaking any codes or laws and making sure that people are qualified investors, but we'll talk to anybody. I should have probably just said that up front. Yeah. We don't want to say no because people have invaluable information and connections, and we'll talk to anyone who's interested in joining our cause.
I love it. Well, if I win the lottery between now and then, it'll be dumb money, but it'll be coming your way because I love this.
Thank you.
Very, very impressed. Congrats to you and your team. If folks are interested in, partnerships or distribution, what's the best way to get in contact?
We have an info opportunity just on our website right now. We are making that a little bit more cosmetically appealing. We're putting some money into our marketing and our website development, but you can go on there. You can request information. I'll probably be the guy that calls you at this phase. So you have just a really good, any question I can answer about our company, both in the technology and our development. And fill that out, www.bactelife.com. And once again, it sounds like back to life, but it's BACTELIFE.com, like bacteria and life put together.
Perfect. Great name, great company. Really appreciate your time today, Daniel. I learned a lot and enjoyed it.
Hey, thank you so much, Garrett. Glad I could be here.
Yeah.